Okay, so with our Plasma Lift Pro, what we do, you've got two different heads. So this head here is for your dots and your dotless treatment. This larger plasma head here we use for lightening and brightening. We also use it for acne treatments as it kills bacteria. And if you run it across your pigmentation, I've tried it on my arms, I actually can see it lightening in front of my eyes. So how we use it's called the jet head, how we use that. We have 3 levels of power here, as you can see, 3 being the highest and 1 being the lowest. Generally, I will start around about the 2, and how I judge how much power to use is generally on the thickness, the texture, and the quality of the skin that I'm working on. I like to work on higher energy levels, and obviously to try and get the best result, but once again based on the skin. It's on continuous mode, so all you do is hit the ready button, push the button on the probe here, and glide or hover your head just above the area that you're working on, like so. So you'll feel warmth going into the surface of the skin. So you can also use this prior to your plasma treatments to kill any bacteria that might be would be on the surface of the skin. So lightening and brightening, and also pre-plasma, dot or dotless. And so that's all you do. And in your manual, there is actually a protocol for a 30-minute facial that you could actually incorporate with your pigmentation programs, in-house programs. So for the dot and the dotless treatment, we just turn the machine off first, then hit spot. And the same thing here, your power, you've got between 1 and 3. Normally I start at 2 and then I increase the power level to 3. I never work on 1. This here is your exposure time on the skin. So it starts at 2 and goes all the way up to 1. So depending on the thickness, the quality and the texture of the skin again, that would determine how much exposure time and energy that I will deliver into the skin. Now when I'm doing my plasma treatments, whether it's dots or dotless, if you look in the manual again, it will tell you for eyes, you're working on a power level or an energy level of 2, and I always work on 0.4 with eyes. So 2 and 0.4, and it doesn't matter whether I'm doing dot or dotless. That's the protocol generally that I would use for there. If I'm working on fleshy areas of the skin, cheeks for example, or jowls, I like my energy. I like to give it as much juice as I can. And if the skin quality is good, the texture's good, it's not too thin, I normally work around about 8 here. And you'll see you've got a shot meter here. That will tell you how many shots you do per treatment. When it gets to 999, it will go back to 1 again. So we just hit the button. You'll see here you've got an LED. So if I touch LED, you'll see the LED appear on the probe up there. And then we've got an auto as well. So if we hit auto, this is for your exposure time. So you just put it on. Oops, sorry. Off, auto, and then you go up and down as to how much exposure time you would like. Here, on, and then your machine will automatically, you'll see the red light going on and off. So it's automatically working here for you. So you don't need to keep pressing the button or the foot pedal if you'd like to work on auto. In my opinion, auto is saved really when you're a bit more advanced using the machine, because you want to have more control. And I find that when you have working on one shot mode, that's when you actually have the best control of your hand piece when you're doing your treatments, whether it's dot or dotless. So we can just turn the auto off. Having said that, I still work on one shot mode just about all of the time. The only time I use continuous mode is when I'm doing pigmentation, or removal. So to change from one shot to to your continuous mode here. Now, if I'm doing pigmentation, I never work with high energy. I always work with the lowest energy possible to get the best possible result. So I would try it at 1, and if I weren't getting quite enough arc when you're using the spray technique, then I would turn it up to 2, but I never ever work on 3 when I'm removing pigment. Always less is more when we're trying to remove pigmentation from the skin. So for eyes, I only ever work on an energy level of 2 and an exposure time of 0.4. That's my protocol. But other areas, I like to give it with the dotless treatments as much juice as I can and as much exposure time as I can. When I'm working though with dots, once again, less is more. So I never work on 3. I always have my energy level on 2, and I will start and see if I can get a spark at 0.4 exposure time or 0.6 exposure time. And then you just count. So when you're applying your dot to the skin, just count 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. And that's basically how I do my treatments. So I only ever use either continuous mode for pigmentation removal, or if you were doing a skin tag removal, and everything else, my energy levels are between 2 and 3. So less is more when it comes to pigmentation, and also less is more when you're doing a dot technique. But when you're doing dotless, I like to have as much power and as much exposure time as I can. And I use the rolling technique. So when I do that, and I've got the probe on the skin, so I'm not lifting it like this as I'm doing it. I'm not doing that. I'm actually rolling it. So I'm holding the probe and I'm just gently lifting it and moving it to the next position, gently moving it just to the next position that way. And so the protocol for dotless is we go up and down this way, and then we do it in the opposite direction. So horizontal and vertical, or vertical and horizontal, either, it doesn't make much difference. If I've got an area that needs more work, there are more lines and wrinkles, then I will use a zigzag technique just to support the work that I've done in that problematic area. I wouldn't necessarily do it over the whole area and put too much heat in, just where the major source of the problem is, and I would zigzag. So I might do 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, and so on. And I might lay a few lines in that way to get the result and just support it. And I often find I work that way when I'm working with cheeks in particular. When you're working under the eyes, once again, I only ever use a power level of 2 and an exposure time of 0.4. So that would be the energy level that I would use for upper and lower eyes. And normally I would do between 150 and 200 shots upper and lower, give or take. Sometimes I'll do a bit more, sometimes I'll do a bit less, depending on you know, the largeness and the lines that are there. But once again, I never overdo it. I'm old school. I always err on the side of caution. I don't want to deliver too much energy to my clients, especially with dots. Or just remember, with dots, less is always more. When you're doing a dotless treatment, you can actually give them a little bit more energy and a little bit more exposure time because there's no surface trauma to the skin there. That's really just about all my tips and tricks. If we were doing a lip flip, for example, and I were using dotless, I would actually rejuvenate the entire lip. Normally, it just depends on your client, you know, whether normally a lip would be an energy of 2. I would try and get my energy up to 6 here. Once again, that will depend on how numb you can actually get your client at that point. The vermilion line of the lips is quite sensitive, so I might just even renumb. I might just top that area up when I get to that. So to do my lip flip, I just work the whole lip first of all, rejuvenate the whole area. If I'm doing dots, and sometimes I might do a combination. I might do some dots and then I might do dot less on the vermilion line, but once again, that would be client dependent. But then I run the probe using the dot less probe, if you're working with no dots, and I run it along the vermilion line, and I do it very, very close together. Then what I do is, if I'm trying to balance the lip, where the bow is of the lip, then I would work that area in kind of a pyramid pattern above that to try and get more lift. So I would run 1 or 2 lines across the vermilion line, not on the lip, not the mucous membrane, above on the skin, but very close to the vermilion line. And then if I'm trying to increase the height of an unbalanced lip, then I would do more work on one side or the other. So I take lots of photos before, in the middle of treatment, and after treatment, and really that's it. If you've got any more questions, just contact Double M Beauty, and I'm happy to help.